We've been following Jesus through the Gospel of John for a couple of weeks now. Last week we heard Jesus say, "I am the light of the world. Those that follow me will not walk in darkness." And this week we hear Jesus say, "I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. Those who know my voice will follow me, and I will give them true life." Jesus uses the sheep and the shepherd analogy throughout his ministry because the folks he's talking to are very familiar with sheep and shepherds.
As early as Matthew 9, we hear Jesus first refer to his people, the people of Israel, as sheep. Jesus is going throughout the villages, teaching and talking. Then Jesus made a circuit of all the towns and villages. He taught in their meeting places, and he reported the kingdom news to them. He healed their diseased bodies, and he healed their bruised and hurt lives. When he looked out over the crowds, his heart broke. So confused and aimless they were, like sheep with no shepherd. Jesus often teaches with use of metaphor. This is no exception. And usually these metaphors are not something to be delved into lightly, because the most literal translation is usually the wrong translation. So he invites us to look deeper into the metaphor by using it over and over again. Early, as in Matthew 9, where he is brokenhearted because his sheep have no shepherd and are wandering aimlessly. And as he leaves us in John 21, and admonishes his disciples, "Feed my sheep." They are poor little lambs. Rick Lawrence has just written a book called The Jesus-Centered Life that talks about the metaphor for sheep. I will. And it explores more deeply John 10. Which is where we are today. "Let me set this before you as plainly as I can," he tells his followers. If a person climbs over or through the fence of a sheep pen, climbs over the fence instead of going through the gate, you'll know that he's up to no good. A sheep rustler. The shepherd walks right up to the gate. The gatekeeper opens the gate to him, and the sheep recognize his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he gets them all out, he leads them and they follow because they are familiar with his voice. They won't follow a stranger's voice, but will scatter, because they aren't used to the sound of it. So these sheep, they are us. Make no mistake about that, right? And Jesus, the Good Shepherd. So as Rick Lawrence looks at the metaphor, and we dig a little deeper, he says that we recognize that Jesus has perfectly chosen this particular animal to describe our identity. And it's a humiliating exploration. Sheep are timid, fearful, and easily panicked. Slow-witted and gullible. Vulnerable to fear, frustration, pests, and hunger. We are easily prodded into a stampede. Quick to descend into a mob mentality. Left without a means of self-defense, sheep are easily killed by their natural predators. They're jealous and competitive for dominance in the herd. They're always seeking fresh water and fresh pastures, but lacking discernment in their choices. Stubborn and always insisting on their own way. We are unable to right ourselves when tipped onto our backs.
Anybody do any sheep tipping?
No.
I know I'm from Montana.
Highly agitated if someone tries to clean or shear their wool. Creatures of habit that get stuck in a rut. And sheep are lastly needy. They require more diligent care than any other breed of livestock. Okay, it's hard to stomach this list, right? Because we generally have such a high opinion of ourselves, Rip Lawrence says. And sheep are embarrassing. But as we think of ourselves, is this not accurate? Is this not the metaphor that's the right one for Jesus to use?
There are other players in this scene. There are what Eugene Peterson calls the rustlers. Many versions of the Bible call them thieves, robbers, hired hands, quick to run, only in it for the money. These represent fame, wealth, power, careers. But the Good Shepherd calls his sheep by name. The Good Shepherd knows his sheep. He leads his sheep.
In the ancient world, and today, shepherding is a lonely occupation. Right? You're stuck out on the hills with your sheep. You have nobody to talk to except your sheep. And in the ancient world, as is true today, shepherds will get together, they'll bring their flocks, and they'll have a coffee break for a day or two, a little fellowship, talk to each other. The sheep are all intermingled. But when it's time for the shepherds to each go back to their own pastures, they will stand apart and call their sheep. The sheep know the voice of their shepherd, and they will go to their shepherd and follow that shepherd. Jesus calls them by name. Jesus calls us by name. And when we hear Jesus, we follow. So there are a lot of voices speaking in our ears these days. How do you know which one is Jesus' voice? How do you discern who to follow?
But not all shepherds are good. "400 years after David and 600 years before Jesus, a prophet named Ezekiel describes some bad shepherds. That would be the religious and political leaders of the nation of Israel. In the blue letters of the Jesus-centered Bible, those Old Testament portions or segues that refer to Jesus and point to Jesus, there's notes called Reframing Jesus. This one's on Ezekiel 34, and it's called The Shepherd's Hall of Shame. Not all shepherds are created equal. In this chapter, the prophet Ezekiel channels the anger of God toward the shepherds of Israel. The Lord accuses these leaders of selfish ambition and narcissism. They are primarily concerned with their own needs. And they have not cared for the weak or the least of these in their flocks. What a remarkable contrast to Jesus, our good shepherd who selflessly cares for the needs of those in his flock, even laying down his life for them. His care and love for us are defined by the ultimate sacrifice. In John 10:11, which we'll shortly read, he bluntly describes himself. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. Jesus is the last in a long line of shepherds God has tapped to care for his people, and he supersedes them all. Just before he goes to the cross, Jesus tells his disciples they should stop calling others Rabbi and Father and Teacher because they now have only one Rabbi and Father and Teacher, him. We can easily add shepherd to that list. Just one shepherd. Let's go back to John 10 and pick up where we left off. Boy, I resemble this. Jesus told this simple story, the one that Pastor Gerri read, but they had no idea what he was talking about. So he tried again. I'll be explicit then. I am the gate for the sheep. All those others are up to no good. Sheep stealers, every one of them. But the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the gate. Anyone who goes through me will be cared for, will freely go in and out and find pasture. A thief is only there to steal and kill and destroy. I came so they can have real and eternal life, more and better life than they ever dreamed of. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd puts the sheep before himself, sacrifices himself if necessary. A hired man is not a real shepherd. The sheep mean nothing to him. He sees a wolf come and runs for it, leaving the sheep to be ravaged and scattered by the wolf. He's only in it for the money. The sheep don't matter to him. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and my own sheep know me. In the same way the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I put the sheep before myself, sacrificing myself if necessary. You need to know that I have other sheep in addition to those in this pen. I need to gather and bring them too. They'll also recognize my voice. Then it will be one flock, one shepherd. I am the gate. If If we go through Jesus, Jesus promises protection, freedom, food, water, shelter, real life, better life, eternal life. I am the good shepherd. I'm vigilant, courageous, patient with my sheep, even willing to give my life for my sheep.
We take comfort in the Good Shepherd image. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. But if we stop there, we've neglected the teaching, which is, because you are my sheep, I carry a rod and a staff. And they aren't for your comfort. They are for your prodding. They are for your correction. They are to protect you from the wild beasts, but only if you stay with me. The rod and the staff. We've looked at those. These are instruments of herding and correction, and you can look it up on the internet and see that you will see no one is in agreement about which is the rod and which is the staff. Right? We think the staff is the thing with the crook. Some of the experts say, no, that's the rod. This says, and you can't see it, I'm sorry, but this is a staff meeting, and that is obviously a rod. No matter, these are the tools of the shepherd, and they are used to correct and guide the sheep. The rod actually is a gnarly piece of wood, and it looks like that's what is used today in modern shepherding in Palestine. On the end, oftentimes, is a big bulb of wood with nails in the end to beat off the predators, but to also correct the sheep. So if you're a parent, you know that is tough love. Or a grandparent or a friend or an aunt or anyone who deals with children, right? Correction is usually uncomfortable. It's tough love shepherd style. So think about when you've experienced the correcting love of the Good Shepherd in your life. Jesus goes on to say, as he ends his shepherd example metaphor, you need to know that I have other sheep in addition to those in this pen. I need to gather them and bring them too. They'll recognize my voice. Then it will be one flock, one shepherd. Who are these other sheep? Jesus calls us to shepherd one another. He's the example. We follow the example. Shepherd my sheep. Feed my sheep. Tend my sheep.
Which sheep?
All the sheep. One flock. One flock.
So how are we doing as shepherds? Go back to verse 11 one more time. Jesus calls his own sheep by name. You're a child of God. I'm a child of God. We are all children of God, and God knows our name. And he leads them out. Not in. He leads them out. When he gets them all out, did you miss that one the first time through? Verse 11? When he gets them all out, he leads them and they follow because they are familiar with his voice. How familiar are you with Jesus' voice? Amen. Would you join me now?